This podcast is sponsored by CDO Group, the industry leader in providing a full range of construction and project management services. CDO Group has managed thousands of projects in all 50 states. Their group of experts provides systems, processes, and procedures to make sure that your projects turn over on time and on budget every single time. With over 24 years of experience, CDO Group is the industry's leader in construction management and general contracting services. To find them, go to cdogroup.com. Hi, and welcome to the Future of Development podcast. My name's Anthony Amunategui, and I'm here to inspire people to find amazing careers in the construction development world. If you like our podcast, please make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. If you really like our podcast, make sure you hit the little bell. Today, I'm joined by Chris Albrecht from OttOmate.news. Chris, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you on. You know, with Automates and all the background you have with interviewing all these people that are in technology in the food industry, it's for me, that's my favorite subject, right? Watching us develop and grow. I'm really excited about having you on the show, so welcome.
Well, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
You know, as I look back, you know, I was looking at some of the food service industry, and, you know, we work with a big brand that sells hamburgers, and watching them automate their line, you can very quickly see how they've kind of created the bones of the start of it, and how each component on that line can start to switch out and get more and more automated. You know, from your end, what are you seeing that's really starting to get revolutionized, you know, with the automation?
So what I would think is let's think less revolutionized and let's think more like accelerated, right? So just last week, I think it was last week. It might have been the week before, might have been a couple weeks ago. Sorry. But White Castle, the chain, you know, Midwestern, or I guess they're everywhere, but White Castle has 377 locations across the US. And they'll be implementing Miso Robotics Flippy frying robot at 100 of those locations. So more than a quarter of so Miso makes this robot called Flippy. Originally, it was intended to grill hamburgers. That's why they called it Flippy, because it would flip a burger. It used thermal sensors, computer vision, AI, all these things to know when to cook a burger perfectly, right? But they found that restaurants were more in need of something to work the fry station. As you can imagine, fry station can be a dangerous place. You're standing in front of a hot vat of oil. You're taking things in and out. They're splashing. They're slipping. There's all kinds of things. So they paused Flippy's grilling features to turn it into more of a frying robot. And so the Flippy 2 focuses more on frying, and it takes, you know, it has a robotic arm. It's on a rail, and the robotic arm accepts, there's a hopper where you can dump in French fries or tater tots or chicken tenders, and then it dumps that into the oil, knows how long to cook the oil, then takes that basket out, shakes it off, and dumps it into the hopper to be picked up, right? So White Castle is using that at 100 locations, which is a pretty big deal. Miso is also working with Inspire Brands, which does Buffalo Wild Wings, to do a wild wing frying robot. So that's one place where you're seeing it. You're also seeing, and that's in the back of house. And in the front of house, you're starting to see more robot servers come online. There's a company called Bear Robotics out in California. They make a robot called Servi. There's a few companies in China, Pudu Tech, Keenan. They make their own versions of server robots. And basically, these are just self-driving racks that you can load food on, tell it what table to go to, and then it drives itself over to the table where the guest can pick up the food. That way, a server can focus more on customer service and isn't lugging around a big tray of food all night.
Well, you know, we've been working on brands that have, you know, I started putting table locators in for the last couple of years, right? Trying to figure out so that the digital world can see the physical world, and those robots that are coming, right, that are literally coming. And I think that's something to really start to look at, right? As brands start to look forward and start to think about where they're going to go with the, you know, automating their processes, it takes some setup inside the facility to figure that out, right? To be able to look at their current real estate and start thinking, okay, look, in order for that self-serving robot to figure out the space that's going to be able to work in, how do I digitally see that? And you know, one of the brands we're working with has set up these things called table locators, and that you can see very quickly in the future we'll be able to read your, you know, ESN number from your cell phone, and you'll order from your phone and go right to a table, and you know, and now your order will come right to your table instead of you ever showing up at a counter. And, you know, just changing, you know, starting to foresee where that's going. I think that's something that a lot of brands are watching, and some are really starting to create, right? So they're just stepping bravely into these new areas and automating and creating these new options.
Yeah, well, what I think is interesting is if you look at, and this is anecdotal, right? Like I don't have hard market research data on this, right? But if you just Google server robot, what you'll get in Google News is a bunch of local news stories from across the country. So you'll get them from Georgia, Florida, Minnesota, Texas, California. All of them are basically the same thing, right? Like, hey, there's a robot serving your food at this local restaurant, right? It's not big chains that are using these robot servers. It's these mom and pop chains as well. You have your big ones like Chili's and Denny's that are using them, but it's really what I'm finding interesting is the story of robot servers is really one of sort of a groundswell where it's not just big chains ordering 100 of them, right? It's small chains ordering one. And then that robot automatically, if you take Bear Robotics, for example, it just needs to map the restaurant one time. And then it has built-in collision avoidance so that it doesn't run into people. The Bella bot from Poodoo Tech has cat ears. And if you pet it, it'll purr. But another thing is that I think Poodoo was another one at CES this past winter, just this year. They've added now a giant screen to their mobile robot, right? So what that mobile robot isn't just carrying food, it's also announcing specials that are happening. Get half off whatever, right? Like it becomes a mobile billboard for advertising to create either sales and promotion or even possibly even ad revenue, right? Instead of having those restaurants always have magazine ads stuff somewhere, but you can actually have space on there to advertise for local community, local businesses.
Well, I think that's what's neat because the thing that we're not noticing is that as the technology kicks in, right? What starts today as an idea, we're not going to see what the other side of it becomes, right? The ability to know where it's going to go and some of the things you can do, like once we now can enter robots into a facility and now automate this process. And now add a screen to it. Great, that's a start. But who knows what else you can start to add on it? And I think that really is something to look at. Is start to really invent and create the other options you can do. Now you've got in-store communication. Right? Can you add on, hey, by the way, would you like a dessert? Or can I get you something? Can I serve you better? Can I get you a napkin? Can I get you what are the things that I can do in preparation for, oh, by the way, are you signed up for our club? Right? Are you on our email list? What are the things that I can do in store while, I've already served them well. Right now is my opportunity to go in there, communicate with them another notch up, right? How do I take the service device that I have and utilize it? And the things that they're going to utilize it for are unseen, right? You can't even start to imagine them until the robot shows up in the facility and you look at it and go, all right, I hear it. When you said purring, a cat purring, pet its ears and purring, think about entertaining kids and how much fun that is, them running around getting selfies and having this cat that purrs. It's a whole nother level of, hey, Mom, I want to go there for dinner, right? Ronald McDonald was great as an idea, but now you've got a purring cat where I could I want to go back to the cat that purrs, right? That's a whole nother level of something that wasn't there before that device showed up.
Yeah, that's right. And if you think about it, like the idea is there is sort of a novelty to it, right? Yeah. And then you just want it to make the restaurant run more smoothly. So people might come at first to see the robot, but then hopefully they come back because they're getting better service because the robot is taking care of sort of the manual aspect of carrying food back and forth from the kitchen. Anyway, we're just at the beginning of it, but it's accelerating.
Yeah. Now each one of these little inputs, the fry flipping, the fry cooking robot, that's just a great little add-on for a brand. As I look at the hamburger brand that we work for now, they've got this line that, where people work on either side of the line and there's a conveyor belt that goes down the middle of it. But you can see how each segment of that line could be popped off and an automated system be attached to it as they get developed, as it gets, synchronized. Some of these brands the smaller brands are easier to execute on these ideas because they don't have a lot of decision makers to make. A lot of the bigger brands that are out there, they have, hundreds or maybe thousands of franchisees they have to figure out, and they're trying to solve the bigger idea of it. And ultimately, they're looking for ways to be, like you said, more productive, more consistent, more cost-effective, obviously. And with labor costs the way they're going now, you're seeing people really stretch to look for where can I get more and more innovated and use something or more automated so I can use things that are a lot easier and make my whole kitchen experience that much more predictable.
Yeah, I mean, labor is the big thing driving a lot of this, right? And labor is a big, complicated issue, right? There are lots of reasons why there's a labor crunch going on. And those get into issues of like equitable pay, working conditions, and the pandemic really fueled all of this, right? So I don't want to minimize that. I don't want to say like all this is great, right? And for me, it's sort of like it is inevitable. And part of that is because one, a robot like a frying robot can take over a legitimately like potentially hazardous job, right? Yeah. Like working in front of a hot oil thing, and it can do so all day. But what it also allows restaurants to do is control their costs a bit better, because a robot will dispense the same amount of ingredients each and every time. So it knows, so like a picnic pizza assembling robot is always going to spit out this many grams of cheese, this many slices of pepperoni, and it's always going to do that every time. So what you know is that your overages are going to go down. There's less waste just because it's literally a robot doing it. Now, what that means is that there are going to be a lot of parties that need to come together to make sure, well, what do we do about all these displaced workers? And if you talk to tech companies, they're like, well, they'll have better jobs because there'll be now robotic jobs opening. So I really want to make sure that we hold those startups accountable to make sure that those new jobs are being created as we're displacing, what has been like, historically a really easy job for anyone to get as their first job. Well, and so that's part of it.
The job loss idea or complaint that I hear, it's always funny to me because we've always, look, every time we've automated something, that argument comes up. Well, what happens to those people's jobs? So if robots show up in construction, what's going to happen to that construction? Look, they've always been replaced. At one point, we had switchboard operators, right, that answered phone, 555 Chicago, right, and then there were Bell people that did the Bell lines, right? And there were Bell, there were whole Bell companies that ran lines to your house and had put phones out there, and that's essentially going away. And today you've got cell phones. But those jobs have continuously to evolve, and the idea that we can, by slowing down technology, somehow now we're going to benefit the world by keeping those jobs. And we've heard it said 1,000 times: if technology is taking over your job, you probably had a pretty tough job to deal with, right? It had to be repetitive. It had to be, and they will get smarter and smarter at the jobs that they do, but what's also going to happen is they'll give us opportunities to number one, let's look at Uber for a great example, right? At some point, the taxi driver, who was married to a shield, to a company that owned them, now today they make similar money that they made before, if not more, and they operate on their own hours, right? Today, you don't need to go through this massive amount of schooling to become a taxi driver. Today, I could be a dad who drops his kid off at school and then go make $150 a day, and then pick him up at the end of the day and turn off Uber, and I could be an Uber driver. And what it's done is it's taken out all of the middlemen in between it. So as technology keeps getting smarter, it will feel like there will be places where people will go, well, what about my job? And they will continue to be pushed and ask us to grow, right? But here, look, every time my cell phone changed, I just got a new update yesterday. I'm like, damn it, they changed that again. But then, like 2 weeks from now, I'm like, I love this, right? Because it just I'm not made for change. I am a little bit of a creature of habit, and I get stuck in these ways. But ultimately, it's never not served me, right? The changing and the places where you ask people to, there was a robot we interviewed last Friday from Hilti. They're doing this cool robot that drills holes up on ceilings, right? And literally, its whole job is to do the most dangerous job, or one of the most tedious jobs on a construction high-rise job, which is screw holes into a ceiling, hundreds of them in a day, right? And imagine the people that do that. They sit on the ladder, driving all day long. And they've made a robot that does that today. And people could go, well, what about that guy's job? Well, think about that. They're sitting on a ladder, going upwards with dust and cement falling in your face the entire time. And now robots doing that job. Okay, great. Now, what it's also replaced is an operator that operates that. Right now, it takes a team of people that can input the data to run it. Now, it's just taking the work from the front side, the back side of it, and move it to the front side. Now, it's asking the people who did layout, the people who ultimately the people that do that job really, really well, were people who did layout. Right? They were layout experts, but now they can input stuff into a computer. They can see it a lot different. And I think that as those skills change in the restaurant world, that same thing will happen. Now maybe there's not someone that's sitting at a fry machine that's literally sitting there getting burnt because every time that pops out or grease hits you, that if you look at any restaurant, that's the lowest level on the rung, right? Anybody has to get stuck in the fry machine. If you worked at a restaurant, you're like, I got to do fries, but that's how you earn your way in, right? You start the fry machine and you work your way over, and so we're changing that, but ultimately, as a group of people, we're becoming safer. Our people are going home more safe, and we're ultimately making more money because of it. Those jobs are getting smarter, and we'll find out that by doing that, there'll be more money in the system for the other people that we need to have their skills.
Yeah. Well, for sure. Like I said, it's a big, complicated issue, and it's one that I hope that we just, as we proceed, like I said, I think robots are just inevitable because they can work all day. They can work without a break. They don't get injured. They don't get sick. And that's still an important thing right now during a pandemic, which is still going on, is reducing sort of the human to human contact that people have during their food transactions, right? Like people are more aware now of how many people have touched their food or who they need to interact with. And for the worker, like at a grocery store or at a restaurant, the host, that's one person who interacts with potentially hundreds of people a day. Like, that puts them at risk, right? So what I'm just saying is that I think that this march will continue, but I just want us to be cognizant and mindful of how we implement it. To make sure that it doesn't become too one-sided. But, I think that there are, you were talking about the fry station, another robot that I think is going to be one to watch is also from Miso. They're automating the drink station at a drive-through. So the robot will take the order from the drive-through, and then, because right now somebody has to like hold a cup underneath a fountain, right? Which can take a long time. I mean, it sounds kind of dumb, but it is like you got to, get it. And then you got to, kind of do it a couple more taps to fill it up. And there's a ratio for ice to drink, right? And this will automate all of that and then group the orders together so that when the order is placed, that's one less thing, that makes that job, it increases the speed of the drive-through so more customers can come through.
Yeah, it's cool. I've seen that in action, and that's another one of those ones you go, oh, that's genius, right? And each part of that, then if you go to the front side of the counter, the kiosk, right? I think that was the first one. The first time I interacted with the kiosk, I'm like, oh, well, you can't even take my order anymore, and I didn't realize how much easier it was. Now, it just took me a second. Again, it was just like that new technology. I didn't. I thought, oh my God, these people are unfriendly. They're making me go to a kiosk, and they're taking out the part of they can't service me anymore. And I think at first, because it's change oriented, it felt that way. But once I got used to doing this, right, and we're going to see how automating these kiosks are the start of it, right? They may be the really basic part of technology is starting. But you can see very quickly how that becomes an integrated model where you'll be able to actually talk to you just like a server did, and you'll be able to see digitally what's happening there and have orders happen much, much faster and simultaneously, getting orders correct. And, another one of those places where we'll start to see, that real interaction between digital world and the physical. Now, and again, I think that there's a lot of people that are saying, hey, look, my kids now have Starbucks and McDonald's delivered. I mean, it makes me nuts. I'm like, seriously, you had a coffee. You guys could have drove down the Starbucks to get it. No, Dad. Well, I'm like, something's going wrong there. But I think it's more of a novelty. But now it's become a thing that if they want, a group of them get together, they kind of they'll order Starbucks and have it delivered to the house, and all of a sudden they're all got their frappuccinos or their whatever their pink drinks are. There's a whole group of them, and they someone will what they do is they Venmo each other money. And then they put an order together. I'm like, I can't imagine Starbucks, when they first started making coffee in Seattle, ever thought that someone would Venmo money at some house party in Oak Park, Illinois, and all of a sudden, the group had $50 worth of Starbucks delivered, automated.
Well, wait till a drone's hovering outside your house, tethering down lattes.
Yeah, right. You're seeing it. I saw we were working with a pizza group that they're working on an 8-minute delivery. I mean, 8-minute delivery. You can't order pizza. You can't order pizza and go wash your hands and sit at the table in 8 minutes. I mean, that whole process. I mean, that's amazing, right? To be able to have food delivered that fast. Now, you might say, well, what about the delivery driver? Well, look, there's lots and lots of other things that will get created when we do this. And just like, today, there are so many new, I was looking at a study the other day, the amount of new jobs that are created since the pandemic happened. One of the biggest ones is life coaching. I mean, when I was a kid, there was like a couple dozen, right? You had like Tony Robbins, and you had Dale Carnegie, and you had Zig Ziglar, and you might have been able to name, I don't know, let's say 2 dozen, right? Let's say if you're really thinking, you can name 2 dozen of them, right? Today, there are thousands of life coaches in Oak Park, right? Literally, there are life coaches and physical coaches and people that do, mental support, and people that do physical support, and it's a whole genre of careers that has evolved out of us continuing. If you look at our society, we just continue to upgrade and get a little bit smarter and start looking. All right, well, look, we're going 1,000 miles an hour. All right, a lot of us are feeling disconnected. A lot of us need some support from somebody else. That feedback loop that we were missing. We were tribal, right? I mean, just a few thousand years ago, we were tribal people. We walked together, and we all had this way of, elders kind of walked with us and said, "Great, hey son, you're carrying that spear right, or hey, you're doing this right, you're doing that wrong." They'd mark you. They might have given you a rite of passage. You had a feedback loop. Well, today, so much stuff is happening with computers and the internet and the metaverse, and all of these great things are happening so fast. A lot of us are feeling a little off kilter, and all of a sudden now we're looking at a life coach, which wasn't a job that was even something. My dad never even thought about a life coach. It was, maybe you want to get some motivation or something, but you didn't have it the way that we had it there. And certainly his dad didn't think about it. And I think that's really what's neat about the progression of it. It's hard to see that. And sometimes when I kick my heels, I'm like, I don't want to change. Well,
I think the other thing to think about is labor issues. We'll set aside those for a second. But do you need a 2-ton car to deliver 2 tacos or 2 lattes, right? Like, should you have a giant, like a full-size car on the road, increasing traffic, increasing emissions, right? All of those things, when you can have a drone deliver it in, 3.5 minutes, right? One, your latte arrives hotter. It arrives at the right temperature. You aren't clogging up your streets or having people park in front of your house, or, in neighborhoods or wherever, or especially in city environments, right? Where it's tough to find parking, blocking traffic, whatever, right? Like, some of these things just make a sense, whether you use a sidewalk robot or a drone. If you're just getting a meal for yourself, especially, like, it just makes it easier to use a smaller form factor. It makes more sense.
No, it's brilliant. I mean, I never even thought about that. You've got a couple ton vehicle delivering a couple tacos to you. That's when you start to look at that, how silly that is. If you're looking at from outer space, looking at us, going, really? Are you serious?
Yeah.
That seems completely, it doesn't seem like it makes much sense. So, as we keep breaking through and seeing these opportunities, right? Drones, automated delivery vehicles. What excites you the most? What are you looking at going, that's inspiring me. I want to see more of that.
Well, I do really like the idea of drones. I think drones are going to kind of move at 2 speeds, right? Like, there are a lot of regulatory hurdles to be cleared with the FAA and civil aviation authorities around the world. But I think that those, at least in theory, right, make a lot of sense, because if you order a meal, it arrives in minutes instead of, it travels better. It doesn't slosh around inside a car, and you have fewer cars like on the road making those deliveries. I think those are really interesting. The one I'm also interested in is autonomous checkout. So the idea that it's like an Amazon Go store, where you walk in, grab what you want, and leave. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of those. Well, actually, you will start seeing a lot more of those in airports and places like sporting venues, arenas, and hotels, where you can just walk in and grab what you want and go. I think you're also going to start seeing more vending machines. Right now, there are places like, not places, but companies like, Basil Street or Piestro that make hot pizza for you. So imagine being at an airport and your flight is delayed and it's 11 o'clock at night and everything is closed. Or conversely, it's 5 o'clock in the morning and no coffee is open, and there's a robot coffee vending, making you that's robot arm crafting you your latte or your cortado or whatever. I think that those are all really exciting areas to watch.
Well, I think seeing those pizza vending machines blew me away, right? Having a fresh pizza that's literally pressed and made in 3 minutes, fresh oven fired, fired. Now imagine putting that on an autonomous vehicle. And now you can communicate to that thing, and it's making pizzas on the way to your house. Right. To me, you could see that. You blink your eyes in a couple of seconds, and all of a sudden now you're seeing pizzas, being made. You order a pizza, and while you're ordering it, it's driving towards you. Right. Imagine.
Well, there's a company called Yokai Express that makes a hot ramen vending machine, and they just debuted their autonomous driving vending machine. Right. So it's going to be debut on a college campus. So you bring up your phone, you bring up your Yokai app, you basically hail the ramen vending machine to wherever you are on campus, and then place your order, and then it makes the food as it's driving to you, right? So as it arrives, you open up the window, you open up your cubby, and there's your bowl of hot ramen made right there on the spot, right? So those kinds of things are coming. They're already here,
right? I mean, dinner in minutes, and the varieties that you'll be able to get from there. I was talking to you pre-show about a group that we're working with that's looking to put burritos into a robotic, and some of that stuff's really tough, right? We're trying to break through and learn how to do that and make the system to do these. I think that's where a lot of the robotic folks. That's the opportunity more than ever. There's these opportunities for people to continue to take their skills and all the other technology places we've grown and apply them to the food industry or the construction industry, and start to really find a way to go. All right, look, here's the first. We were the group that prints a house every 40 hours. Yeah. Printing a house. In 40 hours. I mean that's essentially a couple of days. You've got a house printed, and they're not bad looking either. I mean, they're energy efficient. They've got all kinds of cool stuff that they've got inside of them, and that again is something that I don't think you could see where that's going to end up as we continue to develop these things. And that's inspiring for me. It's every time we break through one of these things, someone who creates a drone that delivers, someone that has a autonomous a pizza machine or a ramen machine, that a robot that makes ramen on the way to your dorm. Right, you extrapolate that over a city, and now all of a sudden you've got all kinds of neat opportunities for groups and brands and different people that are cooking, making things. Yeah,
absolutely.
Cool.
And you can go to OttOmate.news, OttOmate.news to learn about all of it.
Well, let's make sure they do that, right? Because you guys you're always on the latest technology. Let's make sure that people get there. If people want to get a hold of you, where can they look you up?
Just visit OttOmate.news, OttOmate.news. And also, if they find me on LinkedIn, Chris Albrecht, I post a lot of my stories there as well.
That's where I found you. So I'm grateful to have you on the show. As always, your technology, it's inspiring to watch, and I'm grateful to get a few minutes with you to talk about them. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us. My name is Anthony Amunategui, always looking for people to bring insight into the industry, finding ways to inspire people to have amazing careers in the development world. If you liked our podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. If you really liked our podcast, make sure you hit the little bell. Thanks again for listening. Please share it with your friends.